and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. I am your host, Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, he's a wanted fugitive, so this isn't his real name. Welcome to the show, Matt Freeman. How's it going, Matt?
It's a totally different person this week, going by the name Matt Freeman, but it's a pseudonym this time.
It was very hard to come up with an intro to this episode that wasn't extraordinarily offensive.
That's the fun of this movie.
This week on the show, it is part 9 of our ongoing series, taking a look at the 10 Best Picture nominees, sort of just in time for the 2024 Oscars. This is the penultimate episode, and we are taking a look at American Fiction. And if you haven't seen this movie, you're about to find out what Matt was talking about with that. That's the fun of this movie, because there's some lines being tiptoed around here. And then Matt, we got to talk about the most popular YouTuber of all time. We got to talk about Mr. Beast. I wanted to have a conversation with you about Mr. Beast. I basically, here's the setup for this. I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about children's entertainment, and they started talking about Mr. Beast, and I said, that's an interesting topic. I have thoughts on that, and I bet Matt does too. And here we are.
Yeah, I like to talk about Mr. Beast. He's a fascinating subject matter.
Sure is. But first, we have to talk about American Fiction.
How did you come to write this book?
What really struck me was that too few books were about my people. Where are our stories? Where's our representation?
Would you give us the pleasure of reading an excerpt?
Yo, Sharonda, girl, you be pregnant again? If I is, Ray Ray is gonna be a real father this time around. Thank you.
Monk, your books are good, but they're not popular. Editors, they want a black book.
They have a black book. I'm black, and it's my book.
You know what I mean.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
This movie is about a novelist who's fed up with the establishment profiting from black entertainment, who uses a pen name to write a book that propels him into the heart of the hypocrisy and madness he claims to disdain.
Now, you noticed a pause in Matt's reading of that summary, and that's because he fixed a grammatical error in it as he was going.
Either that, or I screwed up in my reading so badly that I had to change the grammar. We're good either way. We made it.
Yeah, we made it to the end. This movie was written and directed by Cord Jefferson. It is based on the novel by Percival Everett. It stars Jeffrey Wright, Tracy Ellis Ross, and Sterling K. Brown. This movie, Matt, is nominated for 5 Academy Awards, including, of course, Best Picture, Best Actor for Jeffrey Wright, Best Supporting Actor for Sterling K. Brown, and Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Original Score. And I think the thing we need to say at the beginning of this episode here, Matt, is we are white people.
Yeah.
And I say that just like everyone knows that, but like this is a movie very much about the black experience in America, and the black experience more specifically in trying to create novels and movies and entertainment as a black American, and that's not something we can directly relate to at all. So we're not going to be able to be like, wow, we're not going to be able to say like, wow, this is so accurate to the times based on my personal experiences. That doesn't mean we can't talk about the movie. We're going to talk about the movie, of course, but just wanted to preface that here at the beginning.
Sure. I mean, it's a comedy. In addition to being a really effective drama, it's a comedy that I think almost mocks us for our weirdness in this specific way, you know, like,
yeah. Like, I think the ultimate irony is 2 white guys talking about this movie, like, could almost be a scene in the movie.
Yeah.
That there would be a podcast talking about this. Yeah.
This, specifically a podcast where the guys on the podcast talk about it, and it's hard for them to talk about because there's all of this cultural weirdness about it. But, you know, and I was thinking about like, you know, maybe in a few weeks we'll talk about Shogun, possibly. That's a thing that could happen, right? Yeah. And like, we're probably not going to preface that with, you know, by saying like, you know, we don't really understand the 16th century Japanese experience. because we don't have to. But like the whole interesting thing about the world is that there is this cultural sort of snarl around these ideas, and the movie is just a wonderful satire of
Oh
all
yeah.
of that, just
Oh yeah.
top to bottom, and it's just delightful.
Yeah. Yeah. So you liked the movie then? I kind of jumped ahead there.
Yes, I thought it was very funny as a comedy, and I thought it was very effective as a drama, which usually both of those things aren't true, right? Like usually if there's a dramedy, if there's a drama that tries to be funny, maybe it's not super funny. Like honestly, I love The Holdovers, but it didn't make me laugh out loud.
This,
This movie made me laugh out loud.
Out loud, yeah.
This movie made me laugh out loud a lot, like several times, and got me, a few times, got me emotionally. And I found, and in heartfelt ways, not sort of manipulative ways.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too. I think there's some parts of it that I didn't like, which I'm sure we'll get into, some directorial choices and editing choices that I think kind of confused the movie a bit for me. And I'm not a huge fan of the ending, but we can get into that. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I think that one of the most interesting things about this movie to me was the way the trailer completely doesn't sell you on what the movie is. Like I remember, and I actually knew this going into seeing it because I had heard this before, but like the first trailer that came out for this movie makes it seem like it's just a comedy about this author writing this fake book under a fake pen name, and like the comedy of errors of this thing that he wrote to be a admonishment of the entire industry is just loved by the industry, and that's the whole movie, is what the trailer made it seem like. And that's not the whole movie. This is actually a very kind of it's very funny, but it's also a family drama. It's about a guy dealing with himself and his depression, but also dealing with his family, his brother, his sister, who shockingly dies at the very beginning of the movie, his mother, who's suffering from Alzheimer's, and of course their father, who was very depressed and committed suicide years and years ago. That is a good chunk of the film, and that's not in that trailer at all. In fact, like it's pretty far into the movie before he writes the book the first time, and that's just not what I was expecting at all. Like I'd heard this, but I wasn't expecting that. And really, like there's two different trailers for this movie, and one of them is the trailer that I showed you, which is the haha funny book trailer, and then one of them's the serious melodramatic family drama trailer. And I just think it's so funny that they cut. I kind of understand the need to do that too, because I feel like the whole of what this movie is would be difficult to sell in a 2-minute trailer.
Right. It is hard to sell that this is going to be a very affecting story about a complicated man, and also you're going to laugh a whole bunch. Like that's unusual, and I get it too. I agree. I guess I'll just ping off something in there you said, which I thought was something I wanted to talk about anyway. So the whole movie, after he writes the book, he behaves as though he thinks that the book that he wrote has no value, right? He mocks people who like it, and he thinks it's disgusting and trash. But like, I think there's an interesting subtext to the whole thing where the book is maybe not as bad as he wants to believe. Like, he actually put something of himself and his struggle with his father into this book. We know very little about what happens in the book, except that it has to do like the scene that we see sort of played out, which is a man who shoots his father because he believes that he is trash because his father was trash. And it's like, okay, that's how he feels about his own father. I get that. and so it's just interesting how that really remains subtextual. Like there's no moment in the movie where he comes to a realization that the book was actually an earnest expression that he did it in a vernacular that was not authentic to the way that he usually behaves, but it was still capturing something authentic about him. So I don't know. I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that, because I was kind of pondering this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. I had that same read, and I actually think that scene, one of my favorite scenes, if not my favorite scene in the movie, is him actually writing the book, and these two characters are playing the scene out in front of him. and and delightfully like being like when the line is wrong, reacting to it, or turning to him writing the book and being like, okay, what do I say now?
Uh-huh.
I think that's great. It was again not what I expected. The way the trailer sells the creation of this book is that it was done in kind of like a drunken stupor, like he gets wasted and starts punching out this book, and no, like it's he's drinking, of course, because he's drinking throughout the entire movie, but like it definitely is a process that he, like, despite this, trying and succeeding to satirize a certain type of expectation of a novel. I think you're absolutely right that he can't help but put himself into it and put some stuff into it. So I think there is a lot of really interesting subtext there. I picked up on the father thing myself for sure, and I guess, like, maybe this is a critique of the movie. I don't know. I guess the question I have, and I don't want to jump towards the ending quite yet, is like, what are we saying at the end of the day about this? Because I do think there's actually a really interesting conversation to be had here about the where, like, commerce fits into art once again, right? Like, this is a conversation you and I have had multiple times on this show, and we'll probably continue to have again. It's because it's like the eternal question of, art for art's sake, or or art to make money,
Yeah,
right?
for
And
the market. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And you have the character of I forgot her name, but the other author who legitimately and seriously wrote a book that is basically like his book titled "Fuck," which is just wonderful.
Uh-huh.
The Santara Golden is her name. She's played by Issa Rae. And I loved that scene where they're having that conversation at the end, where he's like, "This stuff is trash. It's awful. It's fake. And isn't it bad to play to what the market wants?" And her response is just like, why is that bad? Like, I know what the people want. And she says, I put a lot of research into my book. I spent time researching the types of people I'm talking about here. And then he gives, like, it's a really great scene, because, like, it's a scene where you're listening to, and I'm like, oh, both of these people have great points. Like, both these, like I think she asks is like, do we expect, like, Charles Bukowski to, like, represent all white men
Right.
in anytime he writes about anything? And Jeffrey Wright's like, well, no, but, like, don't you think that we have a duty, considering our stuff is seen so much less often, that we have a duty or responsibility? I'm like, oh, that's a fucking great point too. And it's like, I guess it's the thing I like about the movie, that it doesn't come to a definitive conclusion or answer on this whole thing.
Yeah.
In fact, it comes to a kind of a cynical one, actually.
Yeah, I think it kind of refuses to, and I agree. I was left a little bit stumped by that last argument between the pair of them, because it does feel like the movie is building up toward this argument where we're
Yeah.
going to articulate some kind of thesis, and I think at first my emotional reaction was almost to be disappointed, or I'll say it straight out. I was disappointed, because I was like, oh, that didn't really land the way I wanted it to. Like, I thought we were building toward like a point, and then they argue back and forth, and it's not entirely clear to me what the point was from that
Yeah.
interaction. And then I think after processing a little bit, I'm like, yeah, I think they're leaving you with the complexity and the ambiguity of the situation, where there's no clearly right answer to it, because he accuses her of cynically selling out, basically, and she doesn't quite deny that she's cynically selling out, but nor does she acknowledge it either. She's like, I don't know, there's some good, but like there's some good points back and forth. Like, I thought when he was kind of mocking her for, like, you went to a fine college, what do you know about this? It's like, okay, what, are we only allowed to write about the specific things we've personally experienced? Like,
Yes. I was like, hell yeah, good point.
Yeah,
Issa Rae. Yeah, that's
yeah.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous to have that requirement. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a weird sort of, I don't know what the word is, like feeling of exceptionalism, of like, you can't write about this specific thing because it's like it's off limits, and she and I think her reaction is like, why on earth would it be off limits? that's silly. I'm going to write about it, and because people want it.
Yeah, well, and let's be clear here, like the hypocrisy of everything he's doing is on display the whole time, right? Like he is admonishing her for selling out, for appealing to people, and he is maybe not with the original intent of what he did, but he's doing that too. He's signed a massive book deal, he's signed a massive movie deal. Because he needs money and he wants money, just like she needs and wants money. And
Right.
like he thinks he's better than her because he knows that what he's doing is bad and bullshit. Whereas she believes that what she's doing has value on in and of itself, and that's hypocritical. Like that's ridiculous. And so like even when he's making good points, it's there's this undercurrent of but you're doing the same fucking thing, man. Like you're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why the conversation is so critical to the drama. Is you want him to figure out what he thinks about all this too. Like what is he going to do? I think that's kind of what you said about not being satisfied with the ending. Is connected to that, because you're waiting. A movie like this demands the moment of decision where the character does one of the three things that are offered at the end. It's like, what does he do? Does he confess to the world that he did this thing and take ownership of it? Is it more of a tragedy where he just kind of continue? That's the thing. What's funny is the ending we didn't really get is the one where he just continues to treat it as a secret. Although I guess we're meant to think that the ending where he goes and tells, presumably goes and tells his girlfriend is the one, is the like he's going to keep doing this and he's going to keep the money and it's going to be fine. And then the third and final ending, which of course is the one they go with, where he's gunned down.
But yeah, okay, so that's the third and final ending of the fake movie within a movie,
right?
That is this movie. But like the actual ending of the actual movie is him walking out of a Hollywood lot, having just agreed to sell his life story to Hollywood. You know, looking at another black man, an actor dressed in I think just like slave garb again, like because making the point is this is all we get to play and all we get to depict, and like it's a cynical, depressing ending in my opinion. Like he nothing was accomplished. Like he's part of that same system now and doing it, and maybe he's like more content in himself, maybe. Like I don't know. I mean, like it's just kind of perpetuating the same thing. And I think this ultimately, I think what this is supposed to do is kind of demonstrate what it must be like to be a black or any other underrepresented group, writer, director, creator in this group, where everything you do simultaneously has to be part of you, but also representative of your particular group, but is criticized for that representation or against that representation. Like I feel like I can see the frustration of the screenwriter Cord Jefferson when Jeffrey Wright goes and sees that his books are shelved in African American studies, even though they have nothing. They're books that have nothing to do with being an African American. They're just written by a black man. Like I feel like the author, the screenwriter's frustration with that truth is like coming out of the movie. Like I can feel that. It's just like, this is fucking ridiculous. And like, but like nothing is resolved in that. It's just like, this is the way it is. And I guess all I can do is, if I can't beat him, join him. And like the meta text of this is a movie that is doing very well in a predominantly white industry and is being applauded and lauded for all these things, for making fun of the very people that are now voting for it for Best Picture. It's kind of wild, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's I was glancing over like the critical response to the movie, and like the things people say about the movie are like they sound exactly like the things that people said about the book in inside the movie, where it's just this sort of like, you know, I'm just gonna read the filmmaker has screamed into a bullhorn, bold, chaotic, unflinching, personal. Cord has channeled his creative truths into a searing indictment, and you're like, oh my god, that could have been like that's.
And it's still
not
true. Like, it's true. I think it's like that's a good critique or good analysis in my opinion. But yeah, also there's this another layer on top of it where it's like
I think the layer is the feeling of just that's just an overwrought way of writing.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like you can say it's only when it comes to this topic that it seems that people have to like quadruple down on how amazing it was. And
yeah,
you can't just be like, yeah, it was really excellent, really extremely well executed.
yeah,
You know, it was a solid drama. No, you have to say that you have to use these like buzzwords like unflinching and raw and, you know, and you're like, what are you can't you see what you're doing right now? You're doing the thing. You're doing the thing from the
yeah.
movie.
You're the white publisher and
Yeah.
her assistant doing
Right.
the thing right
Just
this very minute.
Talk
yeah.
about it like it's a normal movie and just say nice things about it.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing, like if it wins the Oscar, you know, for Best Picture, which like that will be so weird, right? because you'll be like, I mean, it was a really great movie, but I know. I know why y'all voted for this because I don't know, man. It's
yeah, I get you, and that's that. I think that's the fascinating thing about it, and that's like it's kind of because I feel like Cord Jefferson knew that would happen when he made this movie. Like part of me sees this movie as his fuck and I guess pathology.
Yeah.
And I mean I looked up, so this is as we said, this is based on a novel that came out in 2001, which is kind of hilarious that like I went and read the plot summary for the novel, and it actually is pretty close, you know, overarching story to what this is. So it's just hilarious to me that black folks in 2001 were having the same frustrations and complaints about how their writing and their storytelling was being presented and perceived. And it's like it's 23 years later and we're still having the same fucking conversation and argument.
Right.
But the one thing that I thought was really interesting that the book did, that I think why Cord Jefferson tried to do the movie within a movie thing is that in the book that he writes, My Pathology, is actually like fully written in the book within the book. Like you get to read the whole thing in there, and so it becomes, I think, and again I haven't read it, this is just off of summary, it becomes like really interesting meta narrative, like because you know you're talking about that one scene we saw where we can say, oh, maybe this is about his father and he is putting more into this than he's letting off. When you get to read the whole thing, I feel like that will be more present and more interesting and subtextual there, like but of course we don't get to see that in the movie, but I thought that was really interesting.
I saw the same, and it made me curious to actually maybe read this at some point because it's a fascinating idea that someone would. I just love that as a premise unto itself, just the idea that you would write something as a sort of as a joke, but because you're approaching it with this certain attitude, it actually ends up containing a lot more truth than you intended. I mean, I for some reason I think about the fact that Chuck Palahniuk couldn't get anything published, and it was making him frustrated and angry, so he just wrote a book that was meant to literally just upset the people at the publishing houses and make them upset because he was mad at them, and that was Fight Club.
I mean, this is like the absurdity of the industry, I think, is very much on display here, right? Like even the Issa Rae character is talking about how she was a reader, that you know, a first reader, that is her job is basically is to read manuscript after manuscript after manuscript and be like the first line. And it's like, okay, so there's one person deciding whether this book you've spent, you know, 2 years of your life creating, it's like a fresh new hire out of college is the person making that decision whether it gets passed up or not. And it's just like that's kind of absurd. And the whole process is absurd
Yeah.
a little bit. Like, I mean, you kind of empathize with them because these are people that have to like take a book and decide and guess, is this going to resonate with people? I
Right.
think so. So like, there's part of me that goes, I understand why you like play to the least common denominator of success here over and over and over again, because who the fuck knows? But man, what a messed up industry.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've been thinking about this a lot lately because we're also reading Duma Key, which is about a painter and visual artist, and that book delves into the notion of the art scene.
Mhm.
I had a whole rant written for last week's Duma Key episode, and I actually just skipped it because it felt like a tangent in the moment that we were in. Funnily enough, it actually fits in this conversation just as well, because the thing about art is it's so many different things. One of the things is like a conversation that you're entering into, but another thing is a market that you're entering into.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these things kind of overlap and kind of interact, although they're not quite the same thing. And you look at a lot of modern art, and by modern art I don't mean the movement, but I mean art that is like in the pinnacle of the art scene today, and you're like,
Yeah.
who is the current most popular painter in the world, and you look at it, and I don't understand it, right? I look at it and I'm just like, I don't get this. And
Mhm.
it's like, well, that's, Matt, that's because this is part of this conversation that has been going on in this community for forever, sort of. And you're not caught up on the conversation. You don't understand what's happening. You don't understand what's being done and why. And the same thing happens in literature as well. I think you and I are relatively speaking more conversant in sort of the conversation that is world literature. Although obviously one can always learn more about that. But then, okay, then there's the whole commercial side, which is like, so you just mentioned that she was the slush pile reader, and I love that choice for that character, because it's like,
Mhm.
this is an extremely important job in a sense. Like, you're keying into, like, what does the market want, and then I'm going to filter all these books that are coming in based on what people are actually going to buy, because we have to make money, and we're not going to waste money printing books that nobody's going to buy,
Mhm.
and we're not going to waste money giving author advances to authors for books that nobody's going to buy. This is simple economics. It's and the thing about the art of like the novel is that, like, everybody, including me, literally thinks like, I'm gonna write a novel. I'm gonna publish a novel, and we all, and like, it's sort of an ego thing, and it's sort of just like, I don't know, you want to create art. It's a human drive to create art, but
Yeah.
but then you create the art, and then you feel this resentment that the world didn't accept it, um, because the thing that you created was absolutely not. You did not have the market in mind when you were writing whatever from the heart, expression of your unique life experience. You were not thinking about the slush pile reader who just came back from a conference about how, right, vampires are out and magic schools are in, and they have to have qualities X, Y, and Z. um and to have that be the character who, what she's doing is totally rational, right? You can,
Yeah.
there's like no real grounds to criticize it, other than like, like, don't you wish you were creating like real art? And then she would just be like, and not get published, and
Yeah.
not make any money.
Well,
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah,
who's defining who real art is anyway? Like
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
this is why this conversation is endlessly fascinating to me, because like you have someone like Stephen King, who I think you could say fairly has been writing to the market his entire career.
Hmm, hmm.
Like he's a very, very popular writer. And his books sell because he writes things that people like to read. And he's also really good at it, right? And like I'm in this place where I'm torn, because like I want art and novels to be like Monk writes them, right? Like I
Hmm.
want them to have like rich stories, fascinating characters, complex, difficult to parse, ambiguous at times. Like, I want those stories to exist, and I want those people to get to write those stories and to be able to live off of writing those stories. But like, also, I totally understand as someone's like, I need to make a vampire book now because I have bills to pay and my mother is sick and needs help. And like, these are all completely logical, rational choices to make. And like, I don't know how we diminish people for this. Like, we were talking about this just last week about like Twilight and because ContraPoints did that video essay on Stephanie Meyer, and it's like, who decides, and how do we decide? And like, ultimately, I think one of the things this movie is doing is that the Jeffrey Wright character is just kind of an asshole. And like, so like, is this the person you want being the gatekeeper of what is and isn't good art? And he's just depressed and frustrated. And like, that has nothing to do with Issa Rae's book. It's his struggle with his own thing.
That's a good point, because I think you're biased toward just being on his side and seeing things from his point of view. But as the movie goes on, you see more and more that he is confused about what his own point of view is actually, and full of self-hatred.
One of the great things about this movie is that he's pretending to be this person that he's not, but he also is in the middle of having this character crisis where he doesn't really truly even know who he is and what he wants, which is well done and good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, just really solid like structure of a story, right? Like every scene. We've been talking about it kind of abstractly a lot, and in specific, but like we haven't hit upon just the careful and subtle exploration of like this family, right? I mean, you mentioned it's a family drama, but like in specific, you have this really affecting tragedy of his sister dying suddenly, and then his relationship with his brother is very layered and evolves in this interesting way, and just the performances there capture all of this. I mean, I don't know if maybe you already said it, but just like Jeffrey Wright, just I mean, I already love Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah,
but
I've always loved Jeffrey Wright. He has a presence and a quiet kind of strength to him that is just comes through in everything he does. I don't know. I don't want to go so far as to say this is the best thing I've ever seen him in, but I think it's close.
I can't think of anything better off the top of my head. I mean, he's the leading man here, so he gets a lot of space. And there are a lot of great moments. There are a lot of great moments where he gets to be comedic. I love so many of the moments where like somebody says something just horribly racist while trying to be super sensitive, and he's like, language of the gutter, Jesus Christ.
I mean,
and then the dramatic moments too, and the subtle moments.
I mean, there were definitely moments here where I don't know, like I laughed and then was like, "Ooh, like is it bad that I laughed at that?" Like when he's doing the I guess ghetto affect, like on the phone, like that was funny. Like when he tells them he's changing the book to fuck, like that was hilarious. And like he does a really good job of simultaneously like putting on the pitch perfect version of that person while also clearly like hating himself for doing it. Like it's really good. It's a really complicated performance. It really is. I don't think he's gonna win Best Actor, but man, great job.
I mean, again, anytime I think this is one of those like crowning achievements of acting is when you make me laugh really hard and then you make me tear up in like the same movie. Like you never forget those movies. Those are some of my favorite movies, and that this movie qualifies as that. I don't know why I feel the need to make this a comparative sport, but like the Holdovers was trying to be both heartfelt and funny, and it was funny in a couple places, but this was I was laughing loudly, several times. So
that's interesting because I think I like Holdovers better than this movie. And I agree with you. I did not laugh out loud in the Holdovers like I did in this movie. I think the emotional moments and the dramatic beats of The Holdovers worked on me a little bit better than they work in this movie for me. All that being said, like I think some of the family stuff is just remarkably effective. Like we haven't talked about Sterling K. Brown yet. I don't know how familiar you are with him as an actor. I watched he was on a television show, This Is Us, for a long time, with one of the basic cable dramas. Like it was a good show. It was one of those shows that makes you cry every week. Like that's its stated goal, is you're going to cry at the end of this hour. It's a really good show with a lot of really great performers in it. And the thing that always happened in the show is that like I felt bad for everyone else because they had to act in the show with Sterling K. Brown, and he's just like, everyone's good, but he's just like 2 levels ahead of everyone else, and it just like really shows whenever he's in a scene with them all, and he's just like completely taking over the scene. Man, this guy has like he has an energy to him, and the way he performs, and I cannot take my eyes off him whenever he's on the screen. And I thought he was really, really good here. Like I totally understand why he got the supporting actor nomination. I guess my complaint about this movie, Matt, and the thing that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is less to do with the story, because I think the structure of the screenplay is really good, but it's some like directorial choices. And perhaps this speaks to why I had a little bit more trouble connecting emotionally to it than a movie like The Holdovers. I think there's some like editing weirdness where I sometimes had trouble following like the beat to beat scene, like geography and momentum and like place in space and time. Like I had a lot of trouble telling how much time had gone by between scenes in this movie. Like there were things where it seemed like the movie was gesturing this thing took place the same day as the scene before it, but that it couldn't possibly. And like I think one of the greatest examples of is there's a scene where Jeffrey Wright is like sitting in bed struggling to fall asleep, and he gets up and it just like basically gives up, and then we cut to him at a bookstore, and it's the scene with him kind of frustratingly moving all his books from the African American Studies section to just the literature section. And like I just assumed that those scenes happened chronologically, and like he couldn't sleep, so he left the house, ended up at a bookstore, did this, and then his sister's there, and I'm like, oh, so this is a different day, and did he go here? Like there's just some like basic like technical scene, like I don't even like geography and like the connecting of structure beats scene to scene that I always like throughout the entire movie. I was like, I'm kind of lost here. Like how much time passes in this movie, by the way? Do you know?
No. And I gotta admit that didn't bother me, but I now that you pointed out, I think I felt it, right? Because part of you is thinking like, not that every movie needs to have a ticking clock element, right? That's kind of an absurd thing to say, but like you are thinking like, okay, he's sort of on a leave of absence. Like what what are we moving toward?
Yeah.
And again, not every story has to be oriented that way, but I did feel a sense of dislocation in time, I guess.
Yeah, and like it doesn't like I don't need to know like what day it is, right? I think the things where it struggles for me is getting to understand what the relationships between the characters are, because like another scene I thought of is, you know, he meets the girl who ends up being his girlfriend at her house. There's this really awkward scene with when her boyfriend shows up, who we learn later is her ex. The next time we see the two of them together, they're getting ice cream, and I presume like I guessed it was like the next day. Because she's like apologizing for it and like, oh, I'm so glad you reached out and called me. And then we cut from that scene to them in bed having just clearly had sex. And I'm like, did they do it like right away, or have we moved forward in time? Like I don't understand where we are in time right now. And like, is this two characters that have progressed, have been steadily progressing this relationship forward, or is this just they just slept with each other after the first time they hung out? And I'm not like critiquing that choice, right? But it makes me lost, and that's kind of the way I felt multiple times throughout this movie, where I was just like, how far have we gone? Like I feel like the stuff with the book happens. It's kind of whenever we move to the family drama stuff, that all gets backgrounded, and then we come back to it, and everything's moved forward. And I'm like, wait, so he already has the movie deal? Has the movie started yet? Like, what? Like, how long did it take him to write the book? Did he write this in one night, or did he write it in multiple nights? Like, all this stuff is just like just a weird like stuff that I just think editing and directing made me lost a little bit. And like perhaps a better editing and better directing could hint at these things in a way that I didn't feel lost.
That's interesting. It's interesting because when you point it out, I think I see all that stuff. But just to briefly take the stance of everything is intentional, maybe it's intentional that they're creating a feeling of sort of dreamlike disorientation in both time and space. I mean, it's interesting. You're focusing on time. If I was going to focus on something, it would be that there were several times when I was like, wait, are we in the beach house or are we in the mom's house? Which doesn't seem like a super relevant thing to be confused about, but it is a thing that I was confused about a few times. And then like there are certain scenes where it really matters that they're at the beach house, right? Because it's like, oh, I didn't know that you guys were going to be here, and I'm like, here where? Oh, I guess this is the beach house. And
because Sterling K. Brown has been hiding out at the beach house since he left the last time, right? And I thought they were at the beach house the whole time. So when they go to the beach house and he's like there for the wedding, and it's like, oh, what? And I'm like, oh, I thought they were there. That's where I thought they were.
That's exactly what I was confused about, and which forces me to conclude that he was at his mom's house and not the beach house. But then I'm like, but I thought they were trying to sell them, and it's just it leaves you feeling like, what?
Another example of this is the cleaning lady that it's the second member of their family meets this guy. They start up a relationship, and by the end of the movie, they're getting married. And like, that's great. I love all that. It's like, it's wonderful to see these two people find each other and fall in love and get married. But like, how much time was this like, and no one says anything like, oh, that's quick. Right. So like, it could have been 6 months. It could have been a month. Like, I don't know. And it's not, I guess I don't feel like I need to, again, I don't feel like I need to know. I don't feel like every scene change has to have like someone say, well, it's been 3 weeks. How are we doing on the book or something like that? It's these things kind of stack up over the course of the book that just kind of made me pull back from it a little bit. Of course, the movie, sorry. To where I think when I'm looking for maybe why the emotionality of some of the scenes didn't work on me quite as much as I wanted to, it's because I was just so unclear with the characters and the relationships because I'm lost in time and space a little bit.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think I don't think it's a minor, or I think it's legitimate because they do introduce the idea of there is a tension over the idea that his mom doesn't have any money, and yet they have no other choice other than to put her in assisted living where she can be monitored, which is going to be incredibly expensive, and so he has to make a decision to get the money, and it's like there is a time element here. There is a sort of sense of urgency here, right? Like, just basic storytelling is like you should, generally speaking, try to put a sense of urgency, a sense of characters needing to make decisions, pressure, narrative propulsiveness, just basic things, and then they kind of only halfway do that job and leave us feeling like, wait, so that's resolved now. But like you never get the moment. You never get the moment when you're like, oh, so this thing with his mom is resolved. It's not a problem anymore. And I don't know. It's interesting. Again, I feel myself being pulled to consider whether this is intentional, because the movie is obviously very uninterested in making us feel closure. Like the whole ending is just it's this weirdest ending ever, right? Because it screws with you. It takes you to the moment where you're like, all right, here's the moment. Here's the catharsis. Here's the climax, right? It's the climax. This is a story. This is a narrative here's my climax that I deserve as the movie watcher. And then it's like, no, we're not going to,
we're not going to give you that. In fact, I don't want you to have that. The voice of the author coming through the character saying, I don't want you to have this pat, easy ending where I explain the theme to you and you get to go home.
Yeah, we're sort of going to make fun of you for being the kind of person that this movie is targeting.
Yeah,
for being like, yeah, and here you are waiting to be spoon fed your moral so that you can go home and feel good about yourself and feel like this is all resolved. And here's your absolution for the price of a movie ticket. I'm not going to give you that, and fuck you. The end. And so I do wonder how much of that sort of ethos is threaded throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I like that, and that makes me want to say that yes, this was all intentional. I'll always err on the side of yes, this was intentional, and I mean maybe it is just because we're dealing with like a movie within a movie, and like you could argue that the entire structure of the film is just him pitching his movie to Adam Brody. And so we're like pitching, and so we're not really interested in the full scope of the story, and we're kind of jumping from beat to beat as we're explaining what's going on here. I mean, you can make that argument. I don't know. And like obviously what I'm saying here didn't like stop my enjoyment of the movie completely. Like I said, I really liked the movie. I laughed a lot. I think one of the most emotionally affecting moments to me was when Sterling K. Brown's character comes to visit their mom in the hospital. And she's having a bad day, but he like gets her up and plays the record, and they're dancing. And then I forget exactly what she said. Is like something like, I knew you weren't queer, or something like that.
Yeah.
His character's gay. And like, it's such a heartbreaking moment where like, that she has no idea what she's saying, that, she has Alzheimer's. She's like barely able to process what's going on. And like, so like, you can't, you're not supposed to get upset about someone that you love saying something like that to you, but of course you still do. And it's just, you feel so bad for him. Like you feel so like, it's such a devastating moment. And again, Sterling K. Brown like plays the shit out of it. So good.
Yeah. I love that. That just reminds me that, we never see his father, but he has there's this thing that's sort of explained to us that he loved his father. He had a better relationship with his father than the other siblings did. But like now he's having this reckoning with learning all of these terrible truths about kind of who his father really was, and then kind of confronting these parts of himself at the same time. That
he is very much like his father. And his father ends it by shooting himself in the head.
Which like the book is called My Pathology. It's like, well, what was he referring to? What is the pathology? And it's like, well, I think it's this. I think it's exactly what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, definitely. Oh man, this has been I've definitely enjoyed talking about this movie with you so much. It's making me like the movie a lot more, and I like I said, I did not dislike the movie. I just felt really conflicted on it because I think there was like it's rare to me that I like notice weird like subtle technical things like directing and editing like that, and I just like I kept noticing it in this movie, and I was like complaining to Elise, my wife, the whole time about it, and she basically took the exact stance that you're taking. It was like, no, that's not bothering me. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why is this bothering me so much? And I don't know. I honestly don't. But
I don't know. Maybe you're just thinking about these aspects of filmmaking more.
Sure.
I feel like, I don't know. I mean, there's certain types of stories where it's less important to pay attention to that kind of thing, and there's certain types where it's extremely important to pay attention to that kind of thing. And I think the truth is this movie falls somewhere in the middle, where it does give us a sort of ticking clock element, and a sort of like the character has to make decisions, and he has to make them now. But then at the same time, like the tone of the movie, the feel of the movie is that it's like this character study interested in this family, and there's just no sense of time pressure on those questions. It's like, is he gonna find some kind of some kind of seeing eye to eye with his brother. There's no time pressure there. The answer is yes, and it happens by the end of the movie. But it doesn't matter when that falls relative to like him signing the book deal or whatever, right?
Yeah, you're right. It does kind of feel like we've taken two ideas and smashed them together. And
Mhm.
I mean, I do like the way what Monk is going through with the book does echo what he's going through with his family and his father. Like, I think that stuff is really cool. But yeah, it does feel like we have two separate movies sitting next to each other, and they like keep threatening to connect with each other. Like, I really did love the moment when Cliff asks him, "How do you have the money to afford this?" And I'm like, oh, we're starting to push these two sides of him together a little bit. And then his girlfriend follows up and, how do you have the money for this? And it's like, oh, these things are, and there's like conflict there of how these things are coming to a head in a way that he's gonna have to tell someone the truth or something. And then we just never get that ever. Like, we just don't. And it is part of what the ending is doing. And maybe that was my disappointment in the ending ultimately, is I just feel like everything was set up for him to come clean, or these people to discover the secret. Like any movie, when someone is carrying a secret and hiding a secret from other characters, like the assumption is eventually someone's gonna learn the secret, and nobody in this movie ever learns the secret. Until he just makes a movie telling everyone the secret.
Yeah, right. There's again no catharsis at all. And I mean, so one of the things you're desperately waiting for is like you know, okay, so I was really into his relationship with his girlfriend. Like, I thought it was extremely sweet and charming, and you love her, and you know, you want this for him. And then you see him start to act like an asshole, and you're like, oh shit, okay. But at the same time, you're like, okay, I know where this is going. He's gonna act like an asshole, and then he's gonna have his moment of turnabout, and he's gonna learn, and he's gonna grow, and he's gonna go back to her, and everything's gonna be fine. And the movie once again is like, nope, you don't get to have your easy out. And that was one place where I was like, oh, okay, all right, that I can play along, but I really wanted to see the resolution to that. And it doesn't feel any better that one of the three endings he suggests is like, well, you know, I could just go confess to her, or you know, and it's like, no, that doesn't,
can't do that one.
Can't do that one because she's not returning my phone calls.
So the assumption is that relationship's just over, which is really sad. Like, and that's the other thing. Speaking of things that feel set up that don't pay off, like, we do this wonderful thing where the second he agreed to be a judge on that book contest, I was like, oh, his book is going to be nominated. Like this, like I knew, like this, the second that happens, you're like, oh, I know exactly where this is going. And then again, like, I was expecting this to pay off in some kind of way where, you know, there's obviously an ethical and moral dilemma of being a judge for the book that you wrote. Like, like, and yet that never pays off in an interesting way. And again, like you said, I think it's about to, like, he's going to stand up in front of everyone and accept the award for his book, and then there's going to be like an outcry of you know, failure in ethics of this. I mean, that's not what the movie's about, but like, it's one of those things where, like, when in stories, when conflict is set up that way, you expect it to pay off that way. And so
totally.
it does leave you feeling like, oh, okay, sure.
I and it's not even a complaint, really. It's it's just an explanation of like, and this is why the movie leaves you feeling a certain way where you're like a little frustrated. I still think, like, I think what made up for it to me was just the absurdity, the fully self-conscious absurdity of him thinking, like you can see him thinking as he's like, well, we could. And then they show the scene, and he, you know, in that scene, he's holding the trophy, and it's obviously this large glass trophy. And the cops are like, he's got a gun, and it's and the camera like lingers on it, indicating how much of not a gun it is. And then they shoot him a bunch of times, and then of course the director wants that one, and you're just like, okay,
but again, that's the most cynical ending of this movie ever, which is like, I'm fucked. Like, I the black creator in this world cannot exist outside of this horrible cycle of these are the ways we're going to be depicted in media. Because even me, who tried as hard as I could to push against this, who wrote this book and presumably now also telling this story. Like that's like his motivation for making his story into a movie is to expose the absurdity of this book. Like he realized there was nothing he could do to kill this book, no matter what he did. Changing its
Yeah.
name to fuck, even standing in front of a bunch of people and confessing to the bullshit wouldn't stop this. And so he thought maybe, okay, I can make a movie about my story and then tell the story of my frustration and my anger and just like this vicious cycle we're caught in. And that maybe that will do it. And even that at the end is reduced to all black stories have to end with a cop
Right.
shooting a black person. Like
which which I guess is why this is a genius movie, actually, because it
Sure.
manages to say, no, no, not gonna let you feel good about any of this.
Yeah.
The
yeah,
end.
true, true.
Here's what we're not gonna do.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not gonna do that. You deal with it. This is your problem now.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. I mean, like we haven't talked about the director too much, but Cord Jefferson, this is his film debut. Like this is the first movie he's ever directed. And maybe that's what I was kind of bouncing off of, is just a first time director figuring out how directing works. He's still kind of learning is some of the technical stuff I was complaining about. But like, look, this guy's past, he wrote, he was a writer for Master of None, the television show. He was a writer for The Good Place. He was a writer for the HBO series Watchmen. He was a writer for Station 11. And then he wrote this movie. This is his first feature film that he wrote and directed, and it's nominated for an Oscar. Like, how fucking incredible of a debut is this movie for this guy? Like,
yeah, that's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is one of those directors who I'm like, despite the small complaints I've had about it, my attention is raised, and I'm just really, really interested in seeing on what this guy does next, because I don't know. We're going to see how this movie does this weekend. I think it has a good chance of getting adapted screenplay, by the way. I think there's good odds for that. Which would be really cool. And then like seeing how this guy takes that and parlays that into, some other movies. I think he's a person who has a lot to say, and what he has to say is really interesting to me. So I look forward to more by Cord Jefferson. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I think that the ability to do this sort of like meta thing in a way that worked for me. And I mean, if it felt like, it was great satire, like fundamentally, or like
yeah.
I don't know if we quite ever actually used that word in this conversation, but it's a fantastic satire, almost like Verhoeven-esque in moments. Like I love when he's watching the TV and it's like celebrating the diversity of Black experience, and it's just this like montage of violence and nothing else.
Yeah.
There's there's no diversity. It's just violence and like different kinds of violence, and it's like this is what our culture has rounded it off to, and it's quite embarrassing. And it's a pointed satire and a subtle satire at the same time, which almost sound like contradictions, but it does its job very effectively.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly like it's something I've read people complain about before is like movies about Black people or movies with Black people in them have to become movies about Black people. Movies with LGBT people in them have to become movies about the LGBTQ experience. Like this is a thing we do, right? Where we can't. We're trying very hard to push more voices and more diversity in the voices that we create and publish and all produce and all these things. But like we can't escape this thing where like oh, this is a movie with Black people in it. Well, then it has to be about the Black experience then, right? Because that's the only stories we can tell. And it's just like, I can imagine how frustrating that feels, that like you turn on the TV and this is a satirized version of that, but you turn on the TV and what do you see the people that look like you in? It's violence, it's slavery, it's all these things when that certainly is part of your experience in this world, but it's not all of it. It's got to be fucking annoying for sure. And you feel the frustration that I'm assuming was in the book and also in the screenplay.
Our culture is pretty deranged about these particular issues right now. And
It's so funny because it's like with it's done with some of the best intention sometimes, and it's just like, I mean, okay, sometimes it's done with some of the best intention. The characters, like the publishers, I think perfectly capture the cynical nature of that, where it's not even, the intentions don't matter. It's just like, I loved the speaking of funny characters, I loved the uh, guy who worked for the award that ends up
yeah,
hiring um, Monk, and like his just annoyed frustration with, yeah, so they want us to be more diverse, so I was
yeah,
calling to see if you would want to do that. And it's just
right,
like they're doing this because they feel like they have to, not because they want to. And it's like, this
yeah,
is silly. This is silly.
yeah. No, and again, when he when he's about to give the award, he's like, "And I want to thank our
Just
wonderful and extremely diverse,
incredibly diverse.
incredibly
Yeah.
diverse panel of judges," and they're just like, "Oh my god, this is so embarrassing."
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and then when the three white judges vote yes on
Uh-huh.
fuck to win, and the two black judges vote no on it to win, and then the one white judge is like, I just think it's really important for us to listen to black voices right now. It's like,
Yeah,
I laughed so hard
yeah,
because the way, I spoke negatively about the direction, but the thing Cord Jefferson does in that scene is, right after she says that, we cut to a wide shot, and it's everyone sitting around the table. On the left side is the three white judges, on the right side is the two black judges, and so it's just like, she's saying that, and then just the movie does such a good job of just milking the irony of that statement in that moment. It
yeah,
allows it, you cut to that, it allows it to sit there for a beat before you move on, and it's just, mwah, it's perfect. It's
yeah.
perfect.
It's fun. I mean, ironically, like despite your complaints about like the scene to scene chronology, I think the comedic timing of the
Oh,
movie as a comedy is impeccable.
absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah. Great stuff.
Yeah,
So that is American Fiction. I really hope it picks up at least adapted screenplay. I don't like, I look at these other ones, and like, supporting actor is basically a lock at this point. It's going to be Robert Downey Jr. I feel like best actor is not a lock, but I haven't heard a lot of rumblings for Jeffrey Wright. It's not going to win best picture. And score is going to go to Oppenheimer. It should go to Anatomy of, the Zone of Interest should go to that, but it's not gonna. So
I didn't.
this is its opportunity here, and I hope it wins.
Gosh, I didn't even notice the score of this movie, which you
I
know,
didn't either. I didn't either.
I mean, I'm usually that's a sign that it was working on me, but working on
Yeah,
me in a subtle way.
sure.
Yeah, I doubt it's going to win best original score.
No, I don't think so. But all right, so that is American Fiction. Well, the Oscars are on Sunday, Matt. I actually thought it would be really cool if we could live stream watching the Oscars, and then I quickly learned that you can't do that,
Yeah,
and that's one of the problems of the Oscars, actually,
that is
because
that
like,
is
when the Game Awards happen, all the video game content creators live stream their reactions to the Game Awards, and it's good content for both the Game Awards and for the content creators. And we can't do that. I mean, here we could live stream our faces while we are watching the Oscars on TV, and you could watch it
yeah.
along with us, and like, but that just doesn't work. So
Yeah, which is funny because as we've discussed in the past, the Oscars are basically just a big commercial for Hollywood films. So
uh-huh.
why wouldn't they want people to like rebroadcast that?
I agree. I think a lot of these award shows need to catch up to times. But
Yeah,
yeah. So are you going to be watching, Matt? I like, you don't usually, but I forced you to have a vested interest this year. So
I mean the thing is the actual answer to the question of am I going to be watching live is like how distracted am I going to be by taking care of kids at that time. But
sure.
I regardless of whether I watch live, I do intend to watch it at some point, possibly the next day or that night or whatever, because yeah, it's like sports, right? If you have
Hmm.
no dog in the fight, then who cares? But
Yeah.
I really actually want to see which of these movies wins. I don't even think that's really it for me. I think what it is for me is I just want to see these films celebrated
Yeah, yeah.
and appreciated in a public venue, and that thought makes me happy. The idea of who's going to actually take home the Oscar, I'm relatively less. It's like whatever. I feel the way I feel about them. If Oppenheimer takes everything, great. If Oppenheimer is upset, I don't really care. I just want to see, appreciation for these. Really, I mean, we've watched 9 of the 10 nominees at this point, and
Yeah.
there's not a one of them that I thought was anything other than a good movie that I would recommend. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm really excited about this year's Oscars for a couple of reasons. I mean, one of the things is people have been yelling at the Academy for years and years and years that if you want people to watch your award show, you need to nominate movies that people saw. And in this year, we have $2 billion movies nominated for Best Picture. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm interested to see what the turnout as far as numbers looks like, how many people are going to watch this. I think it's going to be exciting, and I agree with you. Like the actual winners almost never matter to me, except if it's like you made a really stupid mistake, Academy. Why did you do that? But it is just fun. It is just fun watching the people and the movies celebrated. Like seeing those people get up on stage and have their moment. It's all fun. I mean, there's a whole bunch of bullshit behind it. It's so political. It's so infested with money, but for 3 to 4 hours on the night, you get to forget all that and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, we will be back next week to finish off the series. We're going to be watching Poor Things, our 10th nominee. We'll see how many awards Poor Things racks up this weekend, but we'll talking about that movie in depth next week, and then we'll probably have like an Oscars postmortem on that episode too, where we just kind of talk about what happened and if any of it made us mad or if we're super happy with how it went.
Sounds good.
All right, Matt, before we go, we got to talk about Mr. Beast. Speaking of the moral quandary of content for art versus the market, Mr. Beast.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
Matt, who and what is Mr. Beast for people listening that have somehow possibly never heard of this person or this YouTube channel?
Well, I guess he's perhaps the most successful YouTuber ever.
Mhm.
I think that's true. I mean, he's like I believe he's like a billionaire now. I'm not actually sure if that's true.
I
He's
I have a hard time believing he's not.
yeah. Well, and he's just a very smart businessman, and he's a very savvy creator of what we call content in the year of 2024.
Yeah, I realized I used the word content like 6 times at the conclusion of last section, and I'm not happy with it. But here we are.
And, I mean, one thing to remember about James Donaldson, aka Mr. Beast, is that he's 25.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So, and I do think this is important for me to remember, because when I was 25, I was a baby. I was in graduate school. I was not a competent person, and he's been on top of this game for like several years already, right? He's just very interesting. So it was funny because we wanted to have this conversation about Mr. Beast, and it's like there's so many interesting different things you can say about this man, where like as a businessman and sort of as a sort of artist, he's actually quite admirable and quite unique. If you consider making a YouTube video to be an art, he's an artist, right? But it's like the thing then there's the flip side of it, which we also wanted to talk about, which is like, well, there's the marketing side of it. There's the like he seems to have become a servant of the nameless god of fame, and just like we do whatever we have to do for success.
Yeah.
And one can feel conflicted about this. I don't really condemn him for it. I just think it's it's interesting how this machine works and what the choices that he has made to sort of gain mastery over this machine.
Yeah, I think that was a really great summary. That is kind of where I'm at with him. Is we've talked. I think we briefly talked about him before on some other episodes of the show. These are YouTube videos that I will watch on occasion. I'm not like a religious watcher. I'm a subscriber to him because like the entire world is. He's at 243 million subscribers, which is just absolutely insane. But it's a certain kind of content. It's a certain kind of video. And again, I as I said at the beginning of the show, the kind of reason for this entire conversation was I was listening to another podcast that was having a similar conversation about this. And I think the big question was like, kids love this shit, right? Like I don't know how into Mr. Beast your kids are, but
so they're not actually, which is its own interesting thing that
Yeah.
I don't know what I don't know what to do with. But they know who he is, but they don't watch his videos for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like there are he is probably one of the most well-known celebrities amongst children, like just because like it's like and that when you hear him talk about like why that is, it's intentional, right? Like this is when you're talk about him being a genius businessman comes into play for me, because he just knows how to play the game in a really interesting way of like, he understands the YouTube algorithm better than anyone else possibly, because he is always able to make and eventually it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because he's so big now that everything he does is going to go viral. But like, just continually playing the game to a level where it's not just the topics he picks for his videos, but it's how they're shot, it's how they're cut. It's just like this really innate understanding of what people, especially young people, want out of YouTube content.
Yeah.
And he's really, really good at it. And part of me is like, is this a good thing? Like, is it a good thing that almost all young people like eat this shit up, like devour this stuff? And it got me thinking, like what is the difference between watching a 20-minute Mr. Beast video on YouTube, which kids are doing today, versus what we did when we were kids, which is watching the latest episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Power Rangers or Batman the Animated Series or stuff like that? Like obviously there is a difference, but like, is there?
Yeah. Well, so there's a few things I want to say to that. Because I genuinely think this is a really interesting topic. So one of them is that like when asked about this, he basically says like, I'm just obsessed with data. Like if there's a way I could describe myself, I'm a data analyst. And you're like, what? Like, no, you're a video creator. And he's like, no, like every decision we make is based on trying a thing and then digging into the data and like like being a scientist. This is every video is a science experiment that we're performing on the machine that is YouTube, and to some degree the YouTube algorithm, to some degree the YouTube viewership. And we gather data, we make an assessment of what was good, what worked. So what's funny is almost none of this is just like his taste. He's not sitting there being like, that shot needs to be shorter because I artistically feel that. He's like, we know that the shots need to be shorter. Like we have the evidence. It is right here on this graph. And like, so that's one thing that I think is fascinating about him, is he has this very like deconstructionist like attitude toward life, where he's just, everything is an experiment. I was listening to this business podcast where these guys who actually interacted with him said that they were talking to one of his like, there's not even quite a word for this because it's so unusual. I'm going to use the word shadow. They were talking to his shadow, and what I mean is, Mr. Beast was like, I can't hire people to do all of these things that need to be done, because I really need to be the one who makes the decision on all of these things. And yet there are too many decisions that need to be made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hire one person at a time who has a ton of energy and drive and ambition, and they're going to follow me around literally 100% of the time for a while, maybe a few months. And when we're done, they will be a little clone of me, and they will understand exactly what choices I would make in the majority of situations. They will basically have a little what would Jimmy do simulator in their head. And this is the explicit purpose of this exercise. And then after he feels like he has successfully downloaded himself into this person's brain, he's like, all right, now you're in charge of this over here, and you make the decisions that I would make. And he's done this a few times, apparently, according to this thing I was listening to.
Yeah.
And it's like, no one in the world has ever done things this way. But when you think about it, it's like, that's pretty smart.
Yeah.
That's a pretty smart
I mean,
way
it's
of
crazy, but yeah, like,
yeah. It's
it like strategically, I guess it is really smart. I mean, it like there is a part of me that watches these videos, and like one thing that has been true on YouTube and amongst content creators has been this the high value of authenticity in this type of content is like people want to watch you. They want to hear about you. And like I feel like the way they make these videos, like this whole strategy of like it's just Jimmy hanging out with all his buds and they're just doing silly stuff, like it's like Jackass but on YouTube. But like it's not that at all. Like that's just the facade. It is, as you said, this incredibly carefully calculated thing.
Yeah.
Constantly. Where like how much of this person are we actually seeing on the camera? Is he like this at all? Maybe a little bit, but it's wild to think about.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you just said, it's not. There are other YouTubers who sort of are just like, yeah, it's me and my buds hanging out by the pool, and it kind of just is that. But he's spending like $1 million per video on whatever the thing is that they're doing, where it's like we're gonna crash Lamborghinis into each other, and it's like, yeah, you're not just hanging out with your bros. This is an exquisitely orchestrated film. This is an expensive film that you're producing here. This is not just you hanging out with your bros. It's orchestrated to seem like this other YouTube content that actually was very cheap and lazy to make. Because they calculated using the algorithm that was what people wanted to see. But I mean, that's just parenthetically. Like, I think that's the kind of most interesting thing is he for the longest time just like plowed almost all the money he was making back into making the videos.
Yeah.
Which nobody does that. That's crazy. Like, yeah.
The other thing I've heard him talk about before is that he's actually having difficulty getting sponsors at this point, or this was a couple years ago. This might have changed now that like people have redone their budgets, but like that big companies marketing budget and like the portion of the marketing budget like eared for YouTube video sponsorship was smaller than he was asking for in one video for a whole year.
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, we think about it. I think we talked about Mr. Beast last when the Super Bowl came out, and like they were posting these wonderful numbers of like 140 million people watch the Super Bowl. It's like, that's awesome. Mr. Beast releases a video every week that does that, literally once a week that does those numbers. And so like the value to advertisers on this shit is incredibly high, but like, so he demands a high price for it. If you're going to sponsor my video, you're going to give me a shit ton of money. You're going to give me millions of dollars to be a sponsor on this video. And people didn't have the budget. So it was a struggle where he was like, how do I do this now? We've almost gotten too big for video sponsorships, but I assume that problem's been solved because he continues to release videos every week.
Well, I don't want to speak too glibly about this, but I think he sort of solved the problem by becoming his own sponsor, because now he has this candy bar brand and this like, I think the burger brand was a little bit of a false start. And I think he
there's a lawsuit happening with that right now, I think.
Yeah. I think he's sort of pivoting
the company
away.
He contracted with was bad.
And I think I think I heard him say, maybe I'm making something up, but I think he was like, that was probably a mistake. Like just not just the implementation, but the idea even was probably a mistake. That the candy bar thing is so much better margin, and like,
Mm-hmm.
he can market these candy bars to kids, quote unquote, for free, and then make a huge margin on candy bars because they're candy bars,
Yeah.
and sell infinite amounts of them. And
Yeah, they just I'm getting the ads for them too somehow, but they just redid their formula. I've had one before because I was curious, and it didn't taste very good. I mean, it was chocolate, but it was like it tasted like cheap, shitty chocolate.
that,
And they've apparently completely redone their recipe and relaunched, and it's
oh,
supposed to be really good.
that's
They also
funny.
got rid of the D's nuts flavor because for some reason that wasn't selling
But
very
yeah,
good
that's
because no parent wants to buy D's nuts chocolate
yeah,
bars for their children.
worth a try, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it just tangentially to that. My daughter was begging me to buy her a Prime the other day,
Oh my god,
which I
that's the Logan
recognize.
Paul
Yeah,
shit. Yeah.
that's the Logan Paul brand, and I was like, no, I don't want to buy it. First of all, I'm not going to buy you an energy drink. Second of all, I don't really feel like supporting Logan Paul. Third, why do you want it? Like, why are you even asking me for a Prime? There's so many, and I think it's just a testament to how advertising works, where it's in the zeitgeist that you gotta have Prime for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't
You
know.
gotta.
Yeah.
I saw a thing today that said Jake Paul was gonna fight Mike Tyson.
He's been trying to. I haven't heard whether he is or not.
It's happening July
Okay,
20th on
great.
Netflix.
I'm so excited about
Mike
this.
Tyson is 57 years old. What are we
Yeah,
doing?
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's I mean, they're gonna pay him so much money, right?
Oh my
So
god. Yeah.
good for him, right?
Yeah.
Um, I
It is weird that Jake Paul has like seriously just got like just a boxer now.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
what if I know we're off topic, but like that's like I feel like Logan Paul got really into Pokemon cards and the Jake Paul became a boxer.
yeah.
I think
And he's
Logan Paul's a wrestler now too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's like a legitimate boxer. He's
Yeah.
like he's as legitimate as they come. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I kind of want Mike Tyson to kick his ass.
I really do. I really
Like,
do.
like
Yeah.
I think that's the allure. That's actually the game they've set up. Is I forget is it the heel? Like he sort of made himself the heel of
Yeah. Yeah.
boxing, and so
Mhm.
everybody wants to tune in to see him get his ass kicked, and then he keeps not getting his ass kicked, which is really frustrating. Um,
But that just builds up hype for the next one.
yeah, but the thing, I mean, like you said, like Mike, it's hard to imagine Mike Tyson losing to him, but like you said, Mike Tyson is not a young spring chicken anymore.
Yeah. There is a 30-year age gap between the two of them.
Yeah. I don't know. Mike Tyson is another fascinating character. While we're
Oh
just
my god.
taking tangents off of tangents, he's
Yeah.
like the reputation he had when we were kids was just he's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now he's like this wise sage who like speaks only in wisdom.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's fascinating to watch these things evolve.
Mhm. Yeah, so I don't really have anything else to say about Mr. Beast other than like it's just a really fascinating like place we're in right now. Where like this is, I mean, and I think people older than us or people that are paying less attention to this, maybe people that don't have kids, like maybe don't understand like how big this guy is. That
Yeah,
like this is where media is moving to. Like TikTok and YouTube are like kids watch more of that than TV in the traditional sense. Even than streamers and like scripted television, like they watch that stuff more, and it is interesting watching these people like Mr. Beast who are just so fucking good at this. They're just really really good at it. I'm kind of in awe of him. Like
yeah,
it's and like I've been swept up by some of his videos too. Like we've talked about this in the past. Like he had one that was like, I built this giant complex that has all these like laser obstacle courses.
yeah,
And it's just like the coolest shit in the
yeah,
world. It's like the thing that as a kid you would think about
yeah,
and be like, I wish I could do like a cool laser obstacle course. And it's
yeah.
like, well,
I this
I
is
built
definitely
one.
Yeah, this episode is definitely not me like sneering at his content. Like
Mm-hmm.
I get it. There was one I watched where it was just him like crashing cars and trains and trucks into this giant pit, and I was like, hell yeah. Like
But
this.
is but isn't that so fucking cynical too? That like this is what entertainment is now. That it's just like not only is it like lowest common denominator shit, but it's like lowest common denominator shit that is designed to be this way because we know that this is what's gonna hit. I mean, the one thing we haven't talked about him yet is like the philanthropic stuff he's shifted
Yeah,
towards,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
like not every video he does, but like a lot of videos he's doing is just like I built a shitload of wells in Africa.
yeah,
I like clothed a bunch of people. Like he's just spending a decent amount of his money just helping people out and making content out of it. Like let's not forget that he's like using that to make content, which also gets him more money. Like that is definitely happening, but
yeah.
I guess it's better than not
No, it's
curing
great.
blindness
Yeah,
in 1,000 people, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Please continue to do that exactly the way you're doing it, Mr. Beast. I have no
mhm.
complaints. Um, I mean, and it's interesting because I was looking at his feed, his Twitter feed right now, and March 3rd, like 4 days ago, he tweeted, this past year, I've slowed down our videos, focused on storytelling, let scenes breathe, yelled less, more personality, longer videos, etc., and our views have skyrocketed. My fellow YouTubers, let's get rid of the ultra fast paced overstim era of content. It doesn't even work. And that's him tweeting it. And so it's like, what's funny is, I mean, this is the him being swept up in the the what's the word, the wake of the thing that he's doing, is I think he's just as annoyed with that style of content as anyone. He's just like, well, it's what works, man. It's what do you want me to do, make content I know isn't going to succeed? But I think I think I've heard him say this elsewhere too. Like, he doesn't like having to do the stupid face on the thumbnails. Like, he doesn't want to do that. That's just the
But
face that gets more clicks.
yeah, but he's
Um,
the one that orchestrated it. Like he's one of the origin points of this fucking YouTube reaction face thing.
yeah,
Like,
but now he stopped doing it. He stopped doing it, and he gets more clicks now.
well,
So,
like this is an interesting examination in is he now riding the wave and using data analytics to like make things that people want, or has he reached a level of he can force the change?
yeah,
Like like
yeah,
Mr. Beast is powerful enough that he can tell people what they want to see. And
yeah,
if I say, like, this is such an interesting tweet because like if I say longer videos are better, less yelling, more focus on storytelling, less fast cutting is better, then all his fans go, yeah, it is better.
uh-huh.
So we should all make videos like that. And then we do that. And then so the algorithm says, oh, people are liking these type of videos more. And then it's this vicious cycle of him kind of dictating what the trend is.
Maybe,
I don't know. Maybe
maybe,
like
yeah.
the cynic in me says yes, absolutely. That's what this tweet is all about. It's not about his frustration with the current state of YouTube. It is he has read the room and has once again a finger on the pulse of where things are going, and he is going to push it there faster because he's going to make more money that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's an interesting statement about the intersection of art as a business and art as a conversation, because in a sense we're always subconsciously, not necessarily with intention, reacting to what we feel is like the vibe,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I'm tired, we're all tired of this now, we're all tired, that's so late 2010s, let's move past that, and who's going to set what's the new thing going to be? I mean, I think like that we've talked about like great artists like Dali and so forth on on the other show in particular, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
one feature of truly great artists is they just are continually reinventing themselves, and they're like as soon as they mastered the thing that they're doing right now, before you even have a chance to get tired of it, they have moved on to a new thing. And to compare Mr. Beast to Salvador Dali, I think there's something to be said for, like, he has morphed and changed the thing that he does over time, and I think successfully avoided getting stale. You can tell by his views, right? Um,
Yeah.
Whereas, you look at most people who have had their day in the sun of YouTube have, sort of, to one degree or another, gracefully passed out of that spotlight because their shtick just kind of became tired at a certain point. And I don't think that's happened to him because he's intentionally constantly reinventing himself.
I think that's fair and true. I wonder, thinking about the way movements and art and stuff advances and moves on, I wonder if the algorithm halts that or slows that in any significant way.
Mhm.
Like how do new ideas and new trends propagate in a world before the internet and algorithms that dictate what we see and control what we see? Well, it through word of mouth, through just like things picking up swell and getting pushed. But when you have an algorithm that's like deciding it, maybe it sticks you in this type of thing. Maybe the reason why this type of YouTube video has been around for as long as it has is because it's like a self-fulfilling thing where it's like the algorithm says this is what more people want, so it pushes that content when people make it like that, so people keep making that content, and it's just a thing we can never get out of. And to be more charitable to Mr. Beast, maybe he's like, the only way to get out of this thing is if I push us out of
Yeah.
it. And I feel like I'm one of the few people that have the power to do that.
Yeah. I don't know. I wish I knew more about the way the YouTube algorithm works, because it's sometimes amazing and sometimes frustrating.
Yeah.
Like this last 2 weeks, I have gotten more interested in like visual arts, as I have mentioned, and now it's showing me a whole bunch of interesting stuff about art and drawing and painting. And you ever wonder how Da Vinci did the Mona Lisa? Well, now I know that because YouTube recommended me the video, right? And like,
Mhm.
I'm really glad that it has done this, because I wouldn't have searched some of these things that it's shown me.
Mhm.
I But at the same time, um it is leading me in a direction that I didn't necessarily choose, right? Like you just said. Um and that's weird. That's a weird
Yeah.
feeling. That's different than what we grew up with, where you just watch Ninja Turtles because it's on TV. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, you're a Ninja Turtles kid, here's every possible thing about Ninja Turtles all day. Like,
Yeah.
we don't really know how to think about this yet, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And that the idea that, the value in reinventing yourself and doing something new is something that, as I understand it, the algorithm specifically pushes against.
Mhm.
If you are a creator and you have your lane and you make a video that's of a certain length, of a certain type, and does a certain thing, and then you suddenly make a video of a different type, the algorithm doesn't like that.
Mhm.
It doesn't like that, and
Mhm.
it will not push those videos as much, and so it's kind of incentivizing you to just keep doing what you're doing. And so yeah, I don't know. I think it's a great, wonderful thing. There's so many episodes of the Ghostbusters cartoon just on YouTube for me to put on for my son. I was my wife twice this week had to do after school stuff until past bedtime, and so I was solo parenting 2 nights this week, and having YouTube to put on while I was feeding my daughter for my son to watch was a blessing. Did you know, Matt, that there's people that just like create fake roller coaster rides videos on YouTube?
No.
There's a
No.
Ghostbusters roller coaster ride on YouTube that is just scenes and quotes from the movie over kind of like shitty computer graphics. That's just like a roller coaster, and it just like goes through the scenes of the movie and plays quotes. And my son loves the shit out of it. And someone just made that. Why? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fascinating. There's so many types of thing that you see it and you're like, that's cool. And it never would have occurred to you in a billion years to make that thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's cool, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. YouTube's a really cool place. I like it a lot. But it's also destroying our children. The
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. A land of contrasts.
Yeah. All right, I think that's going to do it for us this week. If you have any thoughts on American fiction, on the Academy Awards, or on Mr. Beast and his powerful algorithm, you can reach out to us via email and let us know. You can reach us at email, doofmedia@gmail.com, on X @doofmedia, or over on our subreddit, r/doofmedia. Let us know. Let us know what you think about this whole messy, complicated thing that is America.
Yeah. If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find the show on iTunes, YouTube, right alongside Mr. Beast.
Similar amount of views for each
of our channels. And pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, please consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia. We do have a council of members that get to nominate movies for us to do canon episodes on. We put those on hold while we were frantically trying to get all these Oscar movies in before the Academy Awards. But we're finishing that series up next week, and then we're going to be back to doing our monthly canon episodes after that. So if you want to be one of the people that gets to nominate a movie for us, you can do that over at patreon.com/doofmedia.
That's right. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, that is it. Hope you all watch and enjoy the Oscars this weekend. Next week, we are looking at our final Oscar-nominated film, Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things. And we will also discuss the 2024 Academy Awards. We'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.